Hello and welcome to Laughing in a Tent. My name is Sarah and I will be your host today. And today we'll be doing part 4 of talking about Girls Camp. So for those of you who didn't see the previous videos, Girls Camp is a camp run by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormon Church, LDS Church, Latter-day Saints. And it's for girls who are ages 12 to about 17 or 18. And the camp, it has been really fun. I've gone for many years of my life. They do a lot of just outdoor activities, skill building, friendship building with the girls in your area. And the main goal of Girls Camp is to increase the teens' commitment to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and to the conception of God that is taught by Mormonism. So today we will be talking about my 4th year of Girls Camp. Last time we talked a little bit about my 3rd year with a little sprinkling of 4th year because the years blur together. So if you want to check that out, go back. Also, in the first and second videos, we talked about fundraisers and some purity culture that pops up with the packing lists and policing of swimsuits for the teen girls. That was my first video. Second video talked a lot about camp games as well as camp songs. I sung all of the camp songs that I sung as a teenager during camp. So if you want to see my lovely musical prowess, feel free to check that out. And it took me a heck of a long time to edit one of the songs because I had 2 parts duet with myself. So go check that out, make it worth it. And I think it turned out decently. So today we'll be talking about my 4th year of Girls Camp. So for some context, 4th year is usually the year that they do a really big hike. It's like a prove yourself year for the teenage girls. And you usually do your 4th year when you're, like 15, if I did my math right. And so it's a pretty significant year for the girls. And I'm getting a little bit mixed up on the timeline, but I remember having like a more local, like smaller budget camp, followed by a much bigger regional camp, like alternating years. I could be misremembering that because I didn't really see a lot of evidence in my email or journals and stuff I was looking at for that. But I remember that being the case. In my 3rd year, I remember being a much bigger camp, and they had a really long hike that all the 4th year girls went on. I think there was some sort of medical incident. I'm not really sure what it was, but for whatever reason, when it got to my 4th year, it was a much smaller ordeal, the hike. That was a bummer to me, but we were still able to do 4th year activity. I think we ended up doing like a ropes course kind of situation that took place after Girls Camp for a separate activity later on. But just for that context, 4th year is like a pretty big year. It's a significant one. It's one of the last ones where you're not one of the leaders. So once you turn 16, 17, you start being a youth camp leader. So you start leading groups of younger girls and like having more leadership opportunities. So 4th year is the oldest of the younger girls. And so it's significant for that reason. So to start off, I found a journal entry where I was talking about some things that I did at camp. We would often do a lot of just like fun outdoors activities during Girls Camp. So this year we did whitewater rafting and tubing. And this was like right in the middle of some of the worst times for my OCD. So I was just very much a religious zealot. And that was like very praised within my community. A lot of people would very frequently tell me how great I was at like being righteous or sharing the gospel. And then also I would frequently have adults suggest ways for me to be even more intense. And like some adults would say I should be less intense, but like that was pretty rare and I didn't really listen to them because generally there was a mindset of better safe than sorry within the church. So if you could ever be more righteous, like that was probably the preferred route. So when people told me to chill out, I usually wouldn't listen to that because it just kind of seemed like the less safe option. But then when people suggested ways that I needed to be more righteous, I would usually try to apply that. So I, anyway, got pretty intense in my religious devotion. But one example is the mom of one of my friends. She was telling me about how she was trying to be a better missionary. So there's this idea in the church of every member a missionary. The idea being that every person who's a member of the church, so every Mormon, no matter their age or situation, should be basically sharing about the church pretty much constantly. So they would explicitly teach me growing up via training videos and talks and lessons and stuff that if someone at school asked you, how was your weekend? Then a really good response would be, oh, it was great. I went to church and we learned about such and such and would you like to hear more kind of thing. And they marketed it as normal and natural ways to share the gospel. But they really it just primed you to be thinking about the church constantly and constantly finding ways to recruit more people to the church. Even as a very young child. The first time I gave out a Book of Mormon, that's the religious text of the church, I was 8 years old, and I gave it to one of my best friends, hoping that she would join the church. And I was 8, so this is really hammered into you. So this one year, I would have been around 15, and this friend of mine in the ward was telling me how she was trying to be a better missionary, and she was telling me about how when their group had gone whitewater rafting, she had shared with the tour guide all about the church and talked to him about the gospel and the Book of Mormon and all that stuff. And I felt a little bit inadequate because I hadn't shared that with my tour guide. We were split into kind of smaller groups, obviously, to go on the rafts because it can't fit 1 million people. So the group I was in, we just talked about river rafting. We just had normal conversations with our rafting guide. And so I would put in my journal good things I did, things that I need to work on, things that weren't so good that I did. And so I wrote that one of the bad things I did is that I didn't share the gospel with my tour guide. And things that I did good was that I was nice to the guide, but I didn't share the gospel with him. So kind of not quite good enough. Oh, also, I said I need to make reading my scriptures a higher priority, which is just so silly because I was already so fanatical about the church. And I don't know, it was never good enough. Never, ever good enough. Some other things, I complimented everyone. I don't know, there's so much toxic positivity in the church, so much people pleasing. You're just really taught to forget yourself, completely sacrifice your needs in the service of making sure everyone else is doing great and pretending to be good even when you're super depressed. There's just a lot of toxic positivity. So I thought that was interesting that one of the things in my journal that I said I did well was complimenting everyone. It's good to give compliments, but I just feel like I moralized it in a way I probably didn't need to, or definitely didn't need to. And then, another thing I mentioned is that was the year that a few friends of mine made up a fake country. And so we said that we were citizens of this country, and we made up anthem and the flag and stuff. And the name of the country was a combination of all of our names squished together. I kind of think we made our own version of Pig Latin that we spoke in our fake country as part of our backstory. Kind of fun. Next, I thought I would read this email that I found. That's just a sum up of camp from one of our leaders. So it says, "Hello parents, we've had a wonderful week at Girls Camp. The weather was spectacular and the girls had a lot of great experiences, both physically and spiritually. Before the girls get home, I wanted to let you know about an incident that happened late Tuesday night." So I forgot about this a little bit until I was reading this email. But I do remember, so there was one night that we heard a rumor about some scary woman wandering around our camp. And we asked our leaders about it, and they're like, "Oh, we don't really want to tell you about it. We don't want to scare you." And of course, when someone says, "I don't want to tell you about something," I don't want to scare you, I'm like, what's the worst thing that it could be? And I was already really psyching myself out. I'm thinking she's probably a cannibal. And so we were begging them, we're like, "Please just tell us. For sure we're thinking of something worse." I think they just said she was wandering around and shining flashlights on tents or something. And we're like, oh, still creepy, but not to the level we were thinking. But anyway, so this I think was the same year. I think that they're referring to this incident. So anyway, it says around 4 a.m, someone was walking among the tents with a flashlight, messing with the zippers or trying to get into one of the girls' tents. And then one of the leaders yelled at them and they went away. So anyway, it was just interesting to see that come up in my email. And then this next part is also interesting just to kind of see how culture impacts what we did the day-to-day. But it says, "Needless to say, the girls were worried and needed some reassurance for the final night of camp. We contacted some of the dads who were not involved in one of the other events going on at that time with the church. So there were multiple camps happening at once, so a lot of the dads were at one of the other camps, but the ones who were available they contacted. And we ended up with 8 brethren who slept at the camp and took turns patrolling and watching over the camp. We had 2 dads awake and patrolling during the entire night. Everything turned out fine and all is well. I want to thank those brethren who were so quick to sacrifice their time and sleep to keep our girls safe. Sincerely, the bishop." So anyway, I just thought this was interesting. I mentioned in one of my other videos, there's a lot of emphasis in Mormonism on men protecting the women. And I don't think it's necessarily bad that they called in more adults. I think it's very smart to patrol the area at night. I really appreciate that they took our safety that seriously and were willing to do that. And I do really appreciate and look up to the people who were willing to sacrifice sleep to make that happen. I do think it's interesting though, just the gender roles. I mean, an argument can be made that in our society it's sexist and women are maybe more at risk from an unknown person than a man would be. And maybe that's a valid argument. Maybe it's not that deep. Maybe even a secular camp would have done the same thing. I guess I just think it's interesting to see how many times in Mormonism there's some sort of just the girls are scared and so the men have to come in and fix it. And I think probably in this case that might have been a good call to have the men do it, because we didn't really know who the person was or anything about them, or like how much of a safety risk they would be to the average female adult leader. But I just do think it's interesting that there's very much that culture of men sacrificing for the women, men being the protectors. It's just very ingrained in Mormonism, so I kind of wanted to point that out. But as I'm talking about it, I'm like, maybe this is not that crazy to have extra men come and help protect the camp from an unknown person. So I don't know, let me know in the comments. Do you think the women should have just done the patrolling, or does this seem like something that would happen in secular camp as well? Or if you have any experiences in Mormonism with men protecting the women or sacrificing their own needs for the women, let me know. Throughout this video, please feel free to share, comment, subscribe to help me to reach more people. I want to create a space where it's just safe for people who have been influenced by Mormonism, as well as people who have never been part of the LDS Church and who would like to learn about my experiences and some of the doctrines. I think it's super fascinating to talk about, so I hope that you'll join me on this journey and hit subscribe so that you don't miss any of my future videos. I also have a Patreon, which is listed in my description, and because of my amazing 2 Patreon subscribers, I was able to buy new editing equipment, which I'm so grateful for. It helps a lot. So if you would like to donate, that can really help me to just do this work better and support me see some other things. So I found another email that just said, thanks for a great girls camp. One last thing is the 4th year activities. This is what I mentioned before. On Saturday, we planned a really fun day of biking, ziplining, rope coursing. So anyway, that was fun. One other important memory from, I think it was this year, maybe last year. I'll just put it in here. So there was one time, it was like the day of the spiritual activity. And so pretty much every time at camp, we would have one evening where it was like a really big spiritual activity. There'd be little things sprinkled throughout the week, like little scripture study sessions or just little activities and stuff. But there was like usually one night that was like really big, like very thought out, very planned, like elaborate spiritual activity. Sometimes with a big piece of art or a big set or like a really large object lesson kind of thing. So anyway, it was the day of that, and I was so committed Mormon. I was very much what you would call a Molly Mormon, just like goody two-shoes, by the book kind of Mormon. And so I remember one day I was walking along, and there were a lot of girls at girls camp, so we couldn't all fit in one campsite. So there would be kind of just across the campsite, there are like various areas with tents, like various clearings, and then there'd be roads between them. So I was walking somewhere else, and I passed by another campsite where some of the girls were talking. And they were saying that they knew another girl who was very much a Molly Mormon, like me, who followed all the rules, was like really intentional about doing everything she was supposed to be doing. And anyway, they weren't necessarily saying it was bad, just that it was like unusual and that they themselves weren't like that. And I remember hearing that, and I was honestly shocked, because I had the perception at that time that everybody was trying their best. Like everyone was trying to live all the commandments, all the rules, because if you love Jesus, like, why wouldn't you do everything he asked you to do? And we have a belief that like the church is like the true church. Like this is Jesus's church run by Jesus. Like he's calling all the shots. So if he says not to wear shorts any higher than your knee, then you better not wear shorts any higher than your knee, because Jesus died for you and he would be devastated if you wore mid-thigh shorts. So anyway, I was really surprised, because I'm like, wow, they don't seem to care about being Mormon. Like they don't seem to care about following the rules, following the gospel, doing what Jesus wants them to do. Do they love Jesus? Like what's going on? I'm like, I don't understand why they don't care, because like it just felt like such a moral thing to me at that point. I don't know, it'd be like if people were discussing, oh, I don't know, like bullying someone, something that's like clearly immoral. Like it was the same thing for me with Mormonism. It's like, this is just what is right. I don't wear short shorts, I don't drink coffee. These are like moral issues. And so to hear that somebody like wasn't as committed or crazy about it, like that just really shocked me, and it made me really sad, because I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that like most people don't love Jesus. Was how I perceived it a little bit. And like I wasn't like thinking they were bad people, like I didn't hate them or anything, but it just like made me really sad, and I was like, what the heck? And it kind of messed with me too, because I was such a Molly Mormon. I'm like, wow, like I thought we were all suffering together, but it seems like it's just me. So anyway, that same day we met up for the spiritual activity, and they played like an upbeat song. I think it was Johnny Diaz, Joy, and that was the theme of that year. And we were all like dancing to it, and then it started raining and our spiritual activity got rained out. And then I remember later we were hiding from the rain under awnings trying to get back to our campsites because we had all met up in this big clearing for the spiritual activity. And then it starts pouring buckets. And so we're like, oh shoot, like we gotta get back to our tents. But like at this point we had like a walk back to our campsites. So anyway, I remember running between awnings. People had set up, I guess, for some previous activity. Anyway, there were some of those scattered around. So I remember like huddling under there and singing some camp songs. And I was actually really enjoying it because I love rain. And I love dancing and just hanging out with people. That was kind of nice because it would pick me up after the devastating truth that not all Mormons are 100% committed. And then we eventually ended up like hiding in a car because I think that's one of the safer places to be with lightning. I think, anyone let me know if that's wrong, but we were hiding in a car in case of lightning, and we were just like talking and singing songs and stuff. One other thing, so personal progress, I've talked about briefly in one of my previous Girls Camp videos, but it's essentially like a certification program, kind of like, you know, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, like you earn badges. In personal progress, you don't actually earn badges, but you get things signed off, and then once you've gotten a certain amount signed off, you can get a necklace or like ribbon bookmarks to put in your scriptures. And it's very much a status symbol. So you've completed personal progress, then like you're one of the really good Mormon girls. And it's a lot of like traditional gender roles and church stuff. So like the things you have to pass off will be like read the whole Book of Mormon, or make some sort of plan for how to teach your family about Jesus or something. Learn to cook a meal, learn to play the piano or sew, or like other traditionally feminine things. Write in your journal about how you want to be as a wife and mother, like assuming you'll get married and be a mom because you kind of have to, because that's just what Mormons believe. And so anyway, so it was a certification program. There's like different like chapters or like sections. So it's faith, individual works. Oh shoot. Faith, divine nature, individual works. No, individual worth. It's faith, divine nature, individual worth, good works, knowledge, integrity, and virtue. Choice and accountability, I also missed. Anyway, I used to have that more memorized when I was a teenager. I was like trying to be all impressive. I'm like, look, I still have it memorized, but yeah, no, it's not. Like I still have it memorized, it just took me a minute. Just be impressed, okay? Anyway, but yes, there's like different attributes that they're trying to help you cultivate through these different like units of the program. And you do them all at the same time, like you can check off something here and here. I think there's some that were like prerequisites for others, but like most of them you could kind of do whenever you wanted. And it's a pretty big undertaking, like realistically probably like a year or two is more typical for how long it takes to complete this. If you're not like super organized, it can take like several years because there's a lot to it. Like you have to do a lot of hours of work to finish the program. So I did find one email where they were talking about using Girlscamp to pass off some stuff in personal progress, feed two birds with one stone kind of situation. I think this is after Girlscamp. A leader was saying, come to this activity, bring your personal progress books and your journal, and then a lot of things that you did at Girlscamp can also be counted in personal progress. Skills that we've learned or activities we did are very similar to things in the personal progress book. So the ones that are really similar, maybe we'd write a journal entry and then we'd be able to pass off that personal progress item. So yeah. And it also encourages the older young women to help the younger young women. And there's also something called the Honor Bee, which I forget what the requirements are. I never actually did it. I know. I had a lot of shame about it for a lot of years. But it's essentially once you finish personal progress, I think if you help a younger girl also finish her personal progress for a certain amount of hours or something, you can get an Honor Bee award. I forget the exact details. And I don't even know if they still are doing this program. They've made a lot of changes to the youth program since I was in it. So they might not even be doing this anymore, but anyway, that's what that's about. They were saying that some of the older young women could help the younger young women, and that could count as hours for their Honor Bee. And then, oh, and this is cute. They were saying it was going to be carnival themed, so once you pass off things or help other people, you can get a ticket to get like popcorn, snow cones, apples, etc. And then, yeah, so like for example, to pass off one of the ones for knowledge, you can like teach your family a lesson tomorrow about first aid. To pass off one of the ones for good works, you can teach your family a lesson about what you learned about service while at camp. So they're referring to family home evening is where you're teaching your family these lessons. The church has encouraged for a few decades doing something called Family Home Evening once a week, which is basically just like you get the family together, you talk about gospel topics or just like life topics, and it's a time for parents to teach kids important principles. And then as the kids get older, the kids can also participate and give like a presentation to the family about some spiritual topic, or it doesn't even really have to be a spiritual topic. Usually they'll start with a prayer, sing a hymn, do like a short spiritual thought. That could just be reading a scripture and like bearing your testimony about it or saying what you like about it. And then some presentation, and that can be spiritually related or not, it doesn't really matter. It could also be like some fun activity, like going out to a movie or going on a hike or whatever. And then after that, they'll usually have refreshments is what they call it, which is just like a small dessert, and then pray again, and then you can go on with your night. So most Mormon families do this on Monday evenings, and the church like doesn't really do any activities, and even like the temples are closed on Monday evenings out of respect for Family Home Evening to give people time to do that. It doesn't actually have to be on Mondays. You can do it on any day you want. They tell you not to do it on Sunday because you have church on Sunday, but like even then, like you could do it on Sunday. It's just like slightly discouraged, but it's not like against the rules. But most people do it on Monday, and that's like traditionally what it's been. But you could theoretically do it any day of the week. But anyway, so this email is saying like tomorrow night when you do Family Home Evening on Mondays, you can teach your family about first aid during the little presentation, or you can teach them about service, and like by doing that you can pass off some of the things in personal progress. So that's what they were suggesting. And then and then for each values are what they call like the units. So like knowledge would be a value, faith would be a value. Once you finish all the activities, you do a project for 10 hours that teaches you something about that attribute. And the leader was saying that if you wanted to do a 10-hour project, one way that you could get some hours towards that is by helping her plan this activity that she's emailing about. So anyway, just kind of interesting. One other thing I remember from Girls Camp a lot is that it was a very spiritual experience for me. Some of the times I felt most connected to God were during Girls Camps, and obviously I don't believe in God anymore, but I feel like just that sense of awe and like interconnectedness with the universe, I think is something that like I still experience, and something that I definitely experienced at Girls Camp. I think one of the most spiritual things for me was just like looking up at the stars. I've always loved looking up at the stars and praying to God, sending vibes out in the universe, thinking about things. Stars have just always been a pretty spiritual thing for me. So I remember one night we were having this spiritual like devotional lesson around the campfire, and it was dark, and I was just looking up at the stars, and I was like, oh, Jesus loves me. I felt the vibes. I was like, Jesus is my best friend. And I have this memory of shining flashlights up the stars, and you can kind of see the fuzzy line and point out different stars. And anyway, it's just kind of nostalgic. And yeah, there's a few other things I could touch on, but I think that's good enough for now. But yeah, honestly, I really enjoyed Girls Camp. I think there are some things that are deeply problematic in terms of indoctrination and some sexism and homophobia that pops up. But overall, I think it was by a lot of good people with good intentions, and the bonding with other girls and just friendship and fun outdoor activities and skills, I think was really worth it for me. So I think I'm really glad that I did it. I would not send my daughter to camp just because I have issues with indoctrination and just the pressure it puts on her to just kind of take herself too seriously and feel responsible for things that she is not responsible for, like controlling other people's sexuality by covering up extremely all the time. But it was really formative for me, and I think that I'll have to take some parts of that into how I parent, just being outside and having a connection with nature and spending time with other people your age, just doing fun activities in a casual and carefree environment. I think that's really valuable. But that's something that I'll try to replicate as well, even if it's not in a religious context. So anyway, thanks for stopping by my podcast. Just a reminder to please share, subscribe, comment. If you are willing or able, I would love if you would donate to my Patreon. There's a link in the description. And that just helps me to buy things like the editing software I'm using. Thanks so much to my 2 Patreon subscribers for funding this beautiful editing software. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. I'll be coming out with I forget which part I'm on. What part am I on? Part 5 soon. So stay tuned. And don't forget to keep laughing. Bye-bye.